everybody, it is Liz Danoon here. It is Dyslexia Awareness Month. I am in red again, as you can see, and today's Facebook Live is all about the signs of dyslexia. Now, there are lots of places you can find lists. There is, for example, a really extensive list in my book, Helping Children with Dyslexia. But I thought if I was to go through that list today, I would be here for so long that it would be too long. So today, my list is going to come from the British Dyslexia Association, also known as the BDA. And I want to take you through some of the things on their list, which are very similar to my list. So let's start at the beginning. Firstly, there is a misconception that dyslexia is just something that affects reading and spelling and writing. And if this was the case, it would be really easy to identify and diagnose. But the fact is, dyslexia can have an effect on other areas such as coordination, in other words, fine coordination, and gross motor coordination, organisation, and of course memory, short-term, long-term, working memory, and also visual, auditory, all those different types of blended memories can also be impacted upon if a child has a dyslexia. And of course, not only children have dyslexia, teenagers, adults, and the elderly can have dyslexia. It is something that you are born with, and it's something that you can have with you throughout your entire life. Some people know about it, others can have it and never know about it. So of course, it, as we discussed yesterday, can create all sorts of barriers. So I'm just going to fix up my sheet again because I want to make sure I get this right. So as we said, each person with dyslexia will experience the condition in different ways because everybody is unique. And therefore, they'll have their own set of abilities and their own set of challenges and their own set of learning difficulties, differences, or disabilities, depending on which you want to call it, at school and when they're learning new information or having to produce schoolwork or written work like our reports as adults that we quite often produce. So the most important thing, I think, as an educator is to know what to look for if we do have a child in our class that we suspect might have some traits of dyslexia. What do you actually start to look for? And when do you start to take action? When do you start to say, this probably isn't just this child being lazy. This probably isn't just this child misbehaving for the sake of misbehaving. There's got to be an underlying reason why A, the child's struggling to learn, B, their behaviour has changed, C, they're not coping with their schoolwork, and potentially even failing if they're in their older year levels. So today I'm going to just talk to you about the early years, and the reason I'm starting here is because I know we have a lot of parents in our groups that have very small children and very young children who they're very concerned about, and often the first thing they do, which is what I did too, is you start searching on the internet for solutions and for answers to the problems that you're experiencing with your child. But I will tell you, we are also going to cover primary and secondary children in an upcoming email. In fact, it's going to be Thursday's email, so look out for that, which will land in your inbox if you are a member of Dyslexia Daily and you're on our marketing or our database list, and then you receive all the information, all the freebies and everything that we send out to you. So the following indicators may suggest that your child has a specific learning difficulty, such as dyslexia, or we call them specific learning difficulties. Short is SPLDs. So if you see that, you'll know what it refers to. Many young children will display these behaviours, and they'll also make mistakes, like writing things backwards, putting letters backwards. It is the severity and the time that those behaviours occur for, so the length of time that those behaviours persist, that's what gives us the vital clue as to whether they may have a difficulty like dyslexia. So what are some of the signs to look for, parents and teachers? Well, the first one is a difficulty learning nursery rhymes. They've got lots of rhyming words in them, and invariably you have to remember the nursery rhyme to recite it. So you can see a couple of those indicators I was talking about. The phonics with the rhyming, and the hearing the sounds that rhyme, the memory with remembering how to say the nursery rhyme. We've got difficulty paying attention, sitting still, listening to stories when you're reading to them, or they're perhaps listening to an audio book, or you're watching TV and they're struggling to listen alongside you, or watching a video or a YouTube clip. They may like listening to the story, but show no interest in the actual letters or words that are on the page, which is where the story is coming from. They might have a difficulty reciting, remembering, saying, writing, identifying letters in the alphabet. So that's always one that's interesting. A history of slow speech development. My oldest son definitely had slower speech development, which was a bit of a warning signal for me when it came to his learning, and I remember it raised a little bit of a flag. They might muddle up the words like cucumber, or they may say flutterby, and we think, oh, isn't that cute? And it is super cute, but if it goes on for a long time and you start to think, probably time we were through that stage of mucking up our words, then that's when you start to have concerns. Difficulty keeping a simple rhythm. I used to play this game with my children in my class. We used to love it, where I would clap a pattern like, and then they would have to clap it back to me. And we used to do it every morning because I was teaching them to hear the rhythms. Words have rhythms. There is always a rhyme or a reason to what we do when we're teaching. They might find it hard to carry out instructions at a time. For example, you might say, go and grab your library book, go and put your coloured pencils away, speak to the person who sits next to you, remind them to put their library books in their bag. But they got lost on the first two. So that's a list of instructions. And us teachers, we are very good at giving big lists of instructions, and parents are as well. So look out for the child who struggles with that over a long period of time. They might forget the names of their friends, their teachers, the colours, the days of the week, the months of the year, birthdays, bus stops, you name it. They might forget the names of things that you would consider fairly frequently experienced in their life. They may have poor auditory discrimination. For example, they may not be able to tell the word the over the word va, or pop over the word pod. They're different ending sounds, but sometimes children struggle with that discrimination between the sounds. Definitely something to look for if it goes on for too long. Remember, when your child is learning to speak, you would expect them to do these things. We are only talking about flags when these things go on for too long. Think of things like difficulty cutting, sticking, pasting, using glue sticks. That is fine motor skill, and that can definitely be a flag if it goes on for too long. Difficulty dressing, buttons, zippers, socks, shoes, shoelaces, all those things can be a little bit of an indicator of things that you might need to consider down the track. Another one is the baby who goes straight from sitting to walking and actually misses the crawling phase. That's another bit of an indicator because they've missed that milestone of the right and the left brain working together as they crawl. There is so much involved with learning. It's so fascinating. I find it fascinating. I hope you do too. They might have difficulty with catching, kicking a ball, throwing balls. This is more our gross motor coordination, of course. They might trip over a lot, bump into things, drop things out of their hands, like full drinks at the food court, at the shopping centre. They might knock things off the table as they're talking. They might have difficulty hopping and skipping, I know, I remember when I was teaching really early children, I would often teach them to break down all the steps. You know, a hop is a step, pull your leg up, then hop. And if you actually do that over and over again, you're actually skipping. And I used to teach those children who are struggling with those gross motor skills, how to break down those skills. It did help that I was a phys ed teacher as well, and I just loved combining movement with learning. I used to just find it so advantageous. So they will also have really good days, and they'll have super bad days when everything just seems to collapse on top of them and their weaknesses have really been put through their paces in a particular day at school. So that is definitely an area to watch on. Now I'm just going to fix up my piece of paper again because I want to make sure I keep moving in the right direction here. So there is definitely a large body of research linking speech and language difficulties in early childhood to later literacy problems with reading, spelling and writing. And identifying potential speech and language problems as early as possible, of course, is very important, as it can be done right before the child starts school. And this is where kindergarten and preschool is so important in terms of developing language skills and also providing us as parents and teachers with some feedback as to where a child might be struggling. And then that supports their ongoing development at school because everybody knows where they're up to. So if you're worried about your child's speech and language, if you do have a little person, it's important to seek some help as early as possible. And remember, we are talking about issues that go for longer than you would expect. And remember, every child's development is different. So you don't want to be rushing off to see a specialist just because your child is starting to write words and sentences backwards. That is actually very common up until a child is about 7, if you look at the research. And sometimes for a little bit longer. Sometimes I'll just have days where they'll write a word backwards and they won't realise. But invariably it sorts itself out. It's when it doesn't sort itself out that you then seek some help. Because there are benchmarks that you can look at, KPIs, you know, that we talk about in business. They also apply to education, where we actually look at how children are going. And hopefully, I know in the UK they have Senkos, great system. I so wish we had Senkos in all of our schools in Australia, but we don't. We have more a learning support head of learning support or a learning support teacher. Some schools don't even have those. It depends on which state you're in, how big your school is, even whether you have access to counsellors or educational psychologists is all relevant to your local state education authority. But of course in the UK they do have Senkos, and it's a great system because you've actually got somebody who is really qualified, who that you can actually go and speak to or talk to. And I think that's really important to have that person in the school when your child is not making the expected gains, or just to give you the feedback about what your expectations are and if you're on the right track with your expectations. Because I tell you what, parents' intuition is incredibly strong. And if you have this nagging feeling inside of you that something is not right with your child's learning, it's a very good idea to take note, because at the end of the day, we as parents know our child the best, and we should be the ones to be raising the flags if we think something's not right. So there you go. Now, a diagnostic assessment. I often get this question. Now, it depends on the assessment that you're doing. But a diagnostic assessment where you look at standardised tests that have been used for thousands and thousands of children, they are generally in Australia and the UK, and I know in quite a lot of places in the States, generally carried out around 7. And I say to parents, the best indicator for you is once your child has done 1 full year of formal schooling, reading, writing, spelling, sitting at a desk, trying to do exercises, and they're still not making the gains that the children around them are making, and this is where you need to speak to your teacher, it is a very good idea to then start seeking some further assistance. And I think A diagnostic assessment is really important. Unfortunately, in Australia, they're super expensive because you generally have to go private unless you have got an educational psychologist who is at your school. In the UK, it's much easier. In some of the states in America, they're so switched on. They're doing reading testing at the beginning and end of every term in some states in America. Well, we're not doing that here. Invariably, you're lucky if you get it done at the beginning and the end of the year to give you those indicators. But the diagnostic test is something that I can talk to you about in one of these Facebook Lives. So if that's a question you've got, make sure you post below, ask me your questions, and I will answer them. Now, on Thursday, we have got an email coming out. It is going to have all the signs for preschool children, all the signs for primary school children, elementary school children, and all the signs for secondary school children. It gets more and more complex and more options offered to you as the years go on in terms of what the signs are. So I thought if I go through them all today, we'll be here for an hour. So I thought best to stick to preschool today, and then you'll get that email on Thursday, which will have all the primary and the secondary, plus what you need to do next, where you could potentially look at for a diagnostic assessment as well. And so you'll learn all about it there. So I hope you are having a good day. I've got so many messages coming through, but Vicky has just let me know that she was not tested until she was 29 and her school was hell. Well, I hope, Vicky, that all the people who are on Dyslexia Daily and listening today will not let that happen to children today, because I think, we need as much help as we can get. And Rachel's saying she's secondary. Well, Rachel, there'll be a whole list of signs for you that will come out on Thursday. So have a super day, everybody. Enjoy Dyslexia Empowerment Month. I call it Empowerment Month because I like people to feel empowered, but it's literally awareness. We want as many people to understand dyslexia as we can, so that the more awareness there is, the more understanding there is, the more of a community we will have, and the more support will be offered to children, families, adults, everybody who needs it. So have a super day, everybody, and I will see you again tomorrow in a different red top. See you then. Bye.